Welcome to Gruen. We'll get to the panel in a moment. But first, the footy finals were on this weekend and there was one real winner. Gambling! In the past year, over 170,000 gambling ads have played on free-to-air TV. That's 7 times more gambling ads than beer ads, which is why every time I see a gambling ad, I drink. And why, after watching both games on the weekend, I'm still drunk on a Wednesday. Weirdly, the ads aren't about what you can win, but about what you can lose. Sportsbet wants you to fold.
It's Puntmas time, and Sportsbet have invented a gift that lets you cancel your bet mid-race. It's called the Fold.
And if you were betting that Puntmas is going to catch on, fold now. Puntmas, it's like Christmas without the wise men. You can also cash out.
Cash out with Sportsbet and get out of your bet early.
And if you want to get out of your bet really early, don't gamble! Betting ads aren't even allowed to show alcohol while gambling, which means these guys have no excuse.
Hey, stop copying me. Oh, real mature. That's it. Mute.
Yeah, that looks real appealing. A pub, no beer, a bunch of dickheads, and one of them brought along a pitchfork. Obviously couldn't find his tiki torch. CrownBet tried for a less masculine touch.
If I were a betting man, I would choose CrownBet. I could get great odds on every race at the touch of a button. I'd be a CrownBet Rewards member and redeem things like movie tickets. Oh, I love this part. I'd get live vision as it happens wherever I happen to be. Yes! So if I were a betting man, I'd choose CrownBet. It's a better way to wager.
If I were a betting man, I'd bet that chair is about to sink. If I were a betting man, I'd bet it would be cheaper to just buy a movie ticket than to win them gambling. If I were a betting man, I bet you're sick of hearing this phrase. And by the way, you've got a horse portrait and a horse statue. So if I were a betting man, I guess you've got a serious gambling problem. The bank just repossessed your home and you've lost everything except that ugly bloody chair. But really, my bet is that no one will sound like they mean it when telling me to gamble responsibly.
Gamble responsibly.
Gamble responsibly.
Gamble responsibly.
Gamble responsibly.
And most importantly, gamble responsibly.
Gamble responsibly.
Oh, looks like I win again. Time to welcome our panel from PwC, Russell Howcroft, and from Propping Up Big T-Shirt, Todd Sampson. Joining them from BMF, Ali Tilling, and from Campaign Edge, Dee Madigan. Welcome. Early on Sunday morning last week, the Commonwealth Bank did us all a massive favour.
Commonwealth Bank will no longer charge people to use its ATMs. The bank's decided to scrap the $2 fee, which could trigger savings of $500 million a year for consumers.
Oh, thanks, CommBank. $500 million a year sounds bad, but not as bad as walking 3 metres to another ATM. By 1:53 that day, ANZ had announced it would also scrap ATM fees. Westpac followed at 2:31. Suspense, intrigue, what would happen next? Surprise! NAB also cut fees at 3:12 p.m. The good news story led the bulletins that night.
Good evening. First up tonight, it's not often we have news about the banks that puts more money into the pockets of customers. But a long-awaited move today from the Commonwealth Bank, quickly matched by the rest of the Big Four, means just that.
There's more money in my pocket because they've stopped taking it. Thank you, bully, for donating my lunch money back. Dee, what would have been happening Sunday morning?
There would have been a few swear words from the other banks, but this didn't come out of nowhere. The 4 banks had been in discussion, not
collusion, obviously.
Can't say that.
No, exactly. A discussion for the four of them to join together and form a utility company to look after all their ATMs as one. So not a monopoly, just like reducing all the competition down. As part of that, reducing fees or removing them would have come up. They just wouldn't have expected one to jump the gun. But if anyone knows that banks can't be trusted, it's a bank.
I can imagine all the banks just around a table. Who will betray us first? And one's just like, which bank?
But, yeah.
To go first, though, is an important move because they now take credit for the rest of it. And for them to realise the benefit, the other three had to go as well. If they didn't, it's a bit of a prisoner's dilemma. That would have been a massive issue for them. But to go early means the whole story for the whole cycle, 24 hours, 48 hours, is CBA.
I think what's interesting is how fast they reacted. Yeah, so it is a Sunday, and by the time you get to mid-afternoon, they've all copied each other. Yeah, so it's not that hard to know what to do, which is copy what everyone else has done. Nonetheless, you still have to make the call, and I think it's incredible how fast it happened.
I mean, you have to add on the 20 years it took.
They've had to think about it long enough.
Turns out they could do it really quick,
Yeah.
which makes me wonder why they didn't, Russell.
They do act like a flock of sheep, though, don't they? It's like they're all playing a game of kind of anything you can do, I can do too. Like, not better, just two. And I think, you know, we've seen a lot of instances of where something starts out as an innovation, right? And then it becomes parity in the category. Everyone's got it. It just doesn't normally happen in half a day.
But remember, they had their ads... So, jumping the gun strategically, they had all their ads ready to go, and they knew you can't just do this overnight. So they had to sort out their whole back end. And they knew that if they go immediately, it'll take the banks at least a month to catch up. And now they're saying it might be a bit longer. So everyone now is rushing to trial the CBA ATMs until the rest of the banks can actually fix their back end.
Ali, banks aren't even open on a Sunday. Why would they make this announcement on a Sunday?
Well, there's a couple of things at play, I reckon. First of all, Sunday is traditionally slow news day. Right, so they know they're going to get headlines out of it. That's guaranteed. I mean, they probably didn't want to share them with all the rest of the other banks, but, you know, you've got to take what you can get. I think they also realised that this news passes the Great Australian Barbecue Test, right? They want to announce something that people will talk about over a barbie Sunday afternoon, right? And this has social currency. Abolishing a fee that everyone hates, people are going to talk about that. Also, by going on a Sunday, they've made sure they've got one last Saturday night in there. Right, one last go at getting all... one last go at getting all those $2 fees from everyone wandering around, pissed, not being able to go to their own ATM, right? So they've ended on a high. What better way to go?
Australians spend
Can I just say this, by the way? The Great Australian Barbecue Test would be a great show for Channel 9. G'day, I'm Scott Cam. Welcome to the Great Australian Barbecue Test.
Australians spend $780 million a year using other people's ATMs, so it is big business.
But timing that press release, so it's a pretty simple PR cycle in Australia. So you want to own the morning, the Monday morning, right? So because if you have the front page of the newspaper, that front page then feeds morning TV. And then that newspaper generally feeds radio, which will then feed the later bulletin. So you have to time it so that you are the first to get the first cover. If you get that, you're going to have a day, you're going to have 48 hours or maybe a week of it.
I mean, as a campaign from CommBank, you'd have to say, wow, they did that really well. You know, absolutely. The coordination, I think, was incredible. The only thing I wonder is whether they wish they'd gone a little later on the Sunday, so had clean air.
CommBank was the only one ready to roll with brand new ads across online, radio and TV.
Hello, Gordon. You don't bank with us, Gordon?
Well, no.
That's fine. Withdrawal.
Uh-huh. For which you hit me with a fee.
What was that, Gordon?
Nothing.
Nothing, exactly. At CommBank ATMs, you'll no longer be charged ATM withdrawal fees. Nothing, no matter who you bank with.
That's a welcome change. Thanks. I'll see you around.
You will, Gordon. There are thousands of me.
Seriously, I paid $5 to get that ATM to shut up. Russell, if this is a positive announcement, why is the ATM so passive-aggressive?
I don't mind her tone of voice. I really don't. I mean, getting the tone of voice right in banking, it's really hard. We're so used to parent to child, you know, so that transactional analysis, I'm the parent, the institution, down to the child. It is tough. I think that they've done a pretty good job of trying to make it adult to adult. I think the actor's done a fantastic job as well. You know, this notion of surprise. And then, of course, the fee and the free, there's a nice little idea in that. And I certainly, as I went through my Sunday, was really impressed that I saw the press release, listened to the news, watched an ad.
No, that's a creepy ATM.
I mean, what does an ATM sound like then?
But the thing is, I thought the casting of him was quite good, because you imagine them casting. They don't want a young person, because that implies millennials or young people are not with CommBank. So they have to cast someone who's kind of okay, but not really likable. And I think they nailed it with this guy. He looks like the brand, but he's not someone that you'd be proud to have as your customer. So I think they got that right.
Yeah. But he's not a CommBank customer. He's someone else's customer. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. The moment on Gruen, Russell realises he actually agrees with Todd, but just didn't understand what it was.
It's interesting, though, how we're starting to expect those sorts of voices to be female, though. Like, there's things like, Siri, who isn't female everywhere, but in most places. Amazon, Alexa, all those voices. It's almost as if we're looking to women not only for the right answer, but for the answer to everything, which I quite like.
CommBank was on message.
We think it's really important to be able to demonstrate that we're listening to our customers. It's an important step to demonstrate that we're listening to our customers.
We're listening.
Unfortunately, they didn't hear anything their customers said because they were too busy banging on about listening. Also, we've been angry about ATM fees for years. If that's how long it takes them to listen, then I can't wait to see what they do about home loan rates in 2037. Dee, what marketing phrases and cliches trigger you?
From the bank, it's where they say, we tailor banking to suit your needs. And you think, no, you tailor it to maximise your shareholder profit and your massive bonuses. My least favourite one, though, was actually a Holden Mirage ad from, I think it was of the 1990s. And it started, people used to say a small car with the features of a big car was a Mirage. You think, no, they didn't. Not in the history of the world has anyone ever used that phrase. But my pet hate one now is any new service that people come up with, they say, it's just like Uber, but... And you're like, fuck off. It's nothing like Uber.
Except for Lyft, which is just like Uber.
I mean, if they're listening, they know that 71% of millennials would rather visit their dentist than hear from the bank.
Tailoring banking to your needs is one of the great end lines. It was written in the probably mid-80s for National Australia Bank, and in the end, they decided to walk away from what, in fact, they could have built a massive, a very, very successful campaign off over the last 30 years, 40 years. They could have been using the tailoring banking to your needs proposition.
But only if they'd actually tailored banking to people's needs.
100%. But if you know what though, if you say it and say it often enough, then people will start to behave that way.
No, I do. When all the evidence proves otherwise.
You have to do it. You can't just say it.
No. You can just say it.
No, you can't just say it.
You can just say it.
You can, but you have to do something.
No, a brand is a promise kept. They didn't keep that promise.
We've been listening to the news. Earlier this year, the Commonwealth Bank allegedly breached laws that allowed criminals to launder millions of dollars through their ATMs. Great news for all the money launderers out there. Now you can do it without paying fees. A current affair is still dark on the banks.
ATM fees are being scrapped. But what will the big banks slug us with next?
They'll make it up somewhere else very quickly.
And more importantly, how will our voiceover guy cope without using the word slug in every story? Bob Catter is a big fan of the banks too.
Did any of the banks get punished? No. In fact, they took their incomes from $790,000 in that period up to over $8 million on average. And yet, The government says there's no necessity for an inquiry.
We need an inquiry into why he pronounces it inquiry. Is that Bob Catter or Scooby-Doo? Like... Inquiry? Ali, will slashing ATM fees make us love the banks?
No, definitely not. I mean, the government reckons the banks are too big to fail, right? But this PR ploy is way too transparent to succeed, right? You can absolutely see the motivations behind this. It's basically worthy of a 6-year-old, right? Yes, abolishing the ATM fee is a good gesture, right? Particularly in rural and regional Australia where there's kind of less choice of ATM to use. Right, but as a PR ploy, it's not going to work because we're all so marketing savvy now, right? And this is just, it's way too obvious. It's not often that I would say this, but I reckon for this, they should not have advertised. I reckon they should lose the jazz hands and just make a simple announcement.
The bank industry hasn't done a good job communicating. You know, more than 80% of Australians are satisfied with their bank. Yeah. Banks pay billions of dollars of tax. They pay out billions of dollars in dividends. Having successful banks, in fact we've got 4 of them, is an incredibly important part of the success of Australia. It's one of the reasons why the rest of the world had a great recession and we were nowhere near as badly affected. It's incredibly important that we all recognise that. Now, that doesn't mean that everything they do is unreal, right? Clearly, everything they do isn't unreal because institutions will always make mistakes. There's just 50,000 people there. Stuff is absolutely going to go wrong. The issue with banks for the last at least decade is that they haven't actually actively competed. They haven't sent us a signal saying, here's a better deal, here's a better offer. They've been pretty lazy. They've just sat back. If the threat creates competition, that's good for all of us.
Yeah, I think the issue with it is that banks trying to be loved. They don't need to be loved. They should be respected. And I think the best PR activity the banks have ever had for the bank brands is the GFC. Because coming out of that, we had a different appreciation of what they are and what they represent as part of our society. Stable, conservative, and strong. You know, because there's an inertia when it comes to the banks. When they put up their fees, 90% of Australians bang their hands and say, we hate our banks, and less than 2% move.
This ATM move will cost the banks 1.7% of their revenue. Other countries, including the Netherlands and Japan, never had ATM fees. The banks are solving a problem they created. It's like they've been punching you in the face for years and now want credit for stopping. Todd, can I get back pay?
No, you can't.
Back pay. I want my back pay.
You can't get back pay.
Get me back pay.
No. Firstly, I think charging fees to non-customers, which is what this was, for use of their equipment, is not an outrageous thing to do. I think that banks have reputational issues. They are, the latest study for reputation of institutions in Australia, they were 11 of 16. So they were just below, well, they were below alcohol and just above tobacco. So they are constantly looking for ways to signal that we're good parts of the community. And they are stable, solid, important parts of the economy. I just think they shouldn't be constantly looking to be loved, because that is simply not going to happen.
I don't buy that.
By the way, alcohol, tobacco and the banks feels like a night out where someone invited their weird friend.
In 1991, there was a recession and banks stopped investing in their brands and they became very, very tactical in their communication. If you go back to the 80s, they actually invested heavily in their brands. So let's just hypothesise. If they'd spent from 1991 until 2017 in people liking their brands, in people, you know, accept, yes?
Russell, I mean, they should do what they're doing. Reduce the fees. Give people, like, do stuff to help people have more money in their pocket rather than spending a whole bunch of advertising saying, we love you, we're with you, we're behind you.
You would have to spend less money making yourself likeable if you were good, I think.
That is the exact same thing the ABC publicity department says about me. Cash is going out of fashion. An estimated 3/4 of all face-to-face payments are tap and go. The Reserve Bank says ATM withdrawals peaked in 2008. That's what the ABC publicity department says about me. And have trended down ever since. Russell, is this announcement the equivalent of saying you can use your Blockbuster card at Video Easy?
Well, no. I get it, but no. It is, yes, so there's a downward trend on ATM or the downward trend on cash, and so therefore you know that future revenues are only going to go one way. So there is a point at which you'll say, you know what, we don't need to charge anymore. I still think it came earlier than people would have been expecting.
But why didn't they do it on the PayPass and PayWave? I mean, when you think about it, the infrastructure for an iPad is a lot less than an ATM. Why not do it on that?
Because it's a better fee.
Yeah. Do you know?
Yeah, I think a cashless economy is not a feeless economy. Because they're still going to charge on the tap and go. They're still going to charge on the. You're still going to get charged on the PayWave, and banks want to go to a cashless economy. One, it brings down their overhead because they have less fixed assets like big branches or ATMs. But the other thing is, when people use cash, there's no data. As soon as they use something electronic, there's a wave of data behind it of which they can use to market back at you.
Now that cash is the new landline, here's how ANZ is selling itself.
Hey, bud, was there anything else?
We went through this last week. Yeah, I already sorted it out. Yeah, Chris, it's a contractual issue. Yeah, it's all about...
Pay using your phone with ANZ.
Really? This is what we're doing now?
You'll be taking it for granted in no time.
Yes, mate, this is what we're doing now, and that's why humanity deserves to die. Ali, what's the message here? Get our product and you can be an arsehole too?
Pretty much. I love this, right? Because in a rare moment of clarity, a bank has realised that people think that their brand and their product are arseholes, right? So they found an even bigger arsehole to put in the ad so that they look good by comparison. Like, that's genius. That's total genius. And it makes us all realise that we're arseholes too, right? Because everyone has had that thing of ignoring a human interaction because they're too busy on the mobile phone, right? But I reckon one of the things here, right, banks are one of the least recalled and least enjoyed ads out there, right? If you are watching a bank ad, first 2 or 3 seconds, you realise that's what it is. You kind of tend to tune out. It's tea break time, right? And that's where this really stands out. This breaks the 3-second barrier because it hasn't got that real kind of earnest, like relentlessly positive tone that a lot of ads have got. This has got a bit of the dark side of humanity, and I reckon that's brilliant. It's kind of authentically arsehole, and what a great tone of voice for an ad.
It's pretty extraordinary, isn't it, that you can actually be on the phone and pay at the same time.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
I mean, really, you sort of would think that a phone would be only able to do one thing at once.
Hang on.
Amazing.
Are you still using that burger phone from week 1?
But it gets good cut through, doesn't it? I mean, you remember it. And the hero is the young guy who says, really, this is what we're doing now? It's a good performance out of the young kid. So.
It's great, yeah.
Westpac is showing us other ways to pay. Who needs money when you've got moves like that, baby? Dance and I'll buy you coffee. Back in the day, bank ads were all smiling tellers. These days, St George is using creepy thumbs and NAB is on the footy field. Oh, call little sports bet. I want to put 50 little bucks on little Dusty to win the little Brownlow. Banks are nowhere to be seen in bank ads. Dee, does that mean the banks hate themselves as much as we hate them?
That is simply not possible. But no, the reality is that our lives have changed. We don't go into banks anymore to make transactions. I think it's dropped in more than half in 10 years. We use online banking. But having said that, banks are actually very valuable real estate, but not for transactions now, for interactions. So dealings with mortgage brokers and with financial planners. But, they wouldn't advertise a bank because when was the last time you went into a bank.
The Westpac ad, the NAB ad, prove it is possible to do likeable advertising for banks and to build the goodwill for their brands. And it's, you know, it's the goodwill bucket. You know, there's the bank. There's water in the bucket. The water is goodwill. Goodwill gets poured out when the banks do things that, you know, people go, ooh, that's not good enough. And then water gets put back in, goodwill gets put back in with something like that NAB Aussie commercial. And I love the Westpac dance. It's awesome.
And I also love when Russell says goodwill, because I just get them to cut it out and I use it as my ringtone. Goodwill. Oh. Because phones can do more than one thing at the same time.
I think bank branches will become advertising in their own right, similar to what's happened in the retail space, where people go to these kind of like a billboard or a pop-up store. It's good to see a bank, even though you never go in. You know, the older people go in and use banks, but it's good to see that they're there. It makes you feel good about it. But the truth of the matter is, most young people will never step foot in it, but it's nice to have them there. It's similar to what's happening to retail shops. Most people go in these shops, they shop, but they buy online.
The end of ATM fees is a rare positive brand story. So we want to celebrate it. In fact, we're so excited, we've made the Commonwealth Bank a new ad with one tiny change. It's slightly more honest than the original.
Hello, Gordon. Are you here to launder money?
Well, no.
Awkward. Withdrawal?
Uh-huh. For which you hit me with a fee.
No. But guess what we did do?
Nothing.
Nothing. Exactly. We've been gouging you this whole time for our own amusement.
Thanks. I'll see you around.
Not at a royal commission, you won't.
The pitch, our segment with opposing teams, voting and a whole lot of unsellable ideas. It's just like Parliament. Tonight, the never-ending citizenship saga. As it stretches into its third month of coverage, we challenge our agencies to prove we've been barking up the wrong flagpole this whole time. Yes, we've asked for a campaign to convince Australia that all politicians should be born overseas. Can they do it, please? Welcome from Marmalade, Sarah Vincencini, and from Head Jam, Luke Kellett. Welcome to you both. Sarah, where was your idea born?
Well, for us, while it's really cathartic to take the piss out of politicians, we felt it was more compelling to tell people what's in it for them.
Oh, let's have a look.
Dole bludgers are a serious drain on the Australian economy, but our biggest welfare pigs aren't Halcos or Housos. It's politicians. Retiring Aussie MPs pocket pensions of 118 grand a year every year for life, costing taxpayers a fortune. But if our MPs were born overseas, once they're out of a job, we could kick them out of the country too. And use their pension funds for good. On homelessness, mental health, addiction, Indigenous recognition, the environment. Important stuff for the welfare of the entire Commonwealth. Export MPs on welfare for the welfare of everyone else. Authorised by Australian citizens of the world.
Hi, Luke. What's your origin story?
Well, our idea was born from the simple fact that most Australian politicians are slightly embarrassing.
Let's have a look.
Australian politicians are embarrassing and frankly expensive to run.
Was that a Bentley or something?
Well, no, that was a Rolls Royce.
Worse still, we have to pay them until they die.
As an ex-Prime Minister of ours.
Put an end to Australia's embarrassment. Let's recruit our pollies from overseas and then, when they're done, send them home. They get to see Australia and we get a tax break. I think that's what they call a win-win. Oh, make it stop.
This is becoming hopeless.
Authorised by the Department of Duty-Free Politicians, spoken by Rod Mulliner.
Well, Russell, it feels like they're both winners and the real loser's going to be our politicians. Which one did you prefer?
I thought duty-free politicians was good fun, but I'm going to go with number one and the idea that we can export MPs.
Dee, what about you?
Yeah, I really liked number 2, but I thought the number 1, what's in it for me, is always a very driving thing for people, so I'm going to go with number 1 as well.
Ali, what was your favourite?
I'm going to go with number 1 too. That line was just brilliant.
Todd, last but not least.
Putting the pensions to good use, I'm going with number 1.
Oh, OK. Well, at least we have a clear result. Congratulations to you both, though. I thought you did a great job. That's good. A fantastic job, guys. This is a Shopkin. If you know that, you're probably a 6-year-old girl, in which case, go to bed. The creation of a Melbourne company, more than 600 million of these groceries with eyes have been sold in the last 3 years. In the US, 2 Christmases ago, they outsold Star Wars toys. The owner of the company just cracked Forbes' list of billionaires. They're the great Australian success story I wish I didn't know about. Here's part of their launch ad.
Shopkins, Shopkins. Welcome to the Shop Thrill Grocery Store. Home of super cute Shopkins galore. Frozen, bakery, fruit and veg. There are aisles of Shopkins to collect.
There's a surprise in every shopping bag. Find Apple Blossom and Popsicle. If you're lucky, you might find the limited edition one. There's 148 to collect. Shopkins want to be shopped by you.
Shopkins!
Oh, it's her first capitalism. Love the disclaimer. Shopkins do not speak. Maybe not to you, but the kids can hear them. Russell, why are all toy ads pitched at a frequency that only kids and dogs can hear?
It's so interesting, isn't it, to look at that ad. It just takes me right back to when I was a kid. It's exactly the same tone of voice.
It takes you back to when you were a little girl?
No. When I was a kid, watching television advertising that's trying to sell me a Nerf gun or Scalextrics, it's exactly the same tone. So it's just a model. It's just a model that absolutely works. And so the Shopkins people have been very clever. They've just picked up that model and made it their own.
But kids hear that high-pitched kind of sound is to kids. That's exciting because that's the voices of their playmates. So that's the ones they listen to. The deeper voices are the people telling them what to do. It's their parents and teachers. So for them, they hear that and they're like, oh, that sounds like fun.
Shopkins launched with blind bags. Footy cards and Kinder Surprise do the blind package thing too. Dee, why sell something like a Lucky Dip?
Because they've been doing this really since the 1900s, since trading cards. And basically the model is you find a product you can make really cheaply, you make a whole lot of variants of it, some you make super scarce, and then you combine them in a random combination that's hidden until you purchase it. So the opening of it is almost the most exciting bit. It's the child version of a $2 scratchy. And when they win, of course, what they do is they go to their social network, which is their playground, and they tell their friends. And if you think scarcity drives product, wait till you try, child envy for it. And where the real genius is for this is they have a new season every 6 months, 148 of the bloody things. And they remove the previous season, so then literally every single one of those things becomes a limited edition.
Yeah, it's a guaranteed repeat purchase. I mean, my kids are young enough to want these, They're very cheap, small, and, sense of discovery is one of the big things that drives all of us.
It also teaches kids how to trade. Because when you've got 2, you'll take them to the playground and you'll say, I've got one of those, let's trade, because you've got 2 of those. And so not only are we sort of helping people learn how to shop, we're helping people learn how to trade.
That's a good thing.
Russell, don't you think it would be better if, say, a big bank had most of the Shopkins and they looked after the Shopkins, so the Shopkins empire was strong?
You know who doesn't like surprises, though? Right, Kinder Surprise are one of the most seized items at US Customs, right? Because they're illegal in the US. Do not try smuggling them. There's big fines for that shit. And the reason is they reckon that they're an unknown quantity posing as chocolate.
Yeah. But I mean, but Kinder Surprise is extraordinary. They just have a YouTube channel, 200 million hits of people just opening Kinder. 200 million more people bloody look at that than voted in the election.
And Shopkins have the same thing. It's called unboxing. It's this YouTube thing, and my 7-year-old daughter watches, and it's grown-ups opening Shopkins things to see what they got. So it's almost like vicarious enjoyment of it. It is absolutely bizarre, but the kids love it.
And collecting is another kind of primal, basic thing. We loved hunting, gathering thing. We love to collect them. They love to go get them. And I mean, when it becomes hoarding, that's pathological. But they love collecting these things. My kids just want to get loads of them, which scares the crap out of me.
What if you were a big bank and you liked money so much you tried to hoard it? Would that be pathological?
No, that's fine.
Shopkins are released in seasons. Personally, I think they jumped the shark in season 8 with Lars Lederhosen. There's a huge YouTube subculture, and the rarest Shopkin went for $21,000 on eBay. Ali, how does something go from a product to meth for kids?
Well, I've got a bit of a soft spot for plastic crap, right? And some of the ways that they market these things are pretty amazing, right? So for something to be a craze, not just a product, it's all about the universe they build around it, right? So it's not just the product, it's the experiences, the stories, all that stuff. But most of the ones that go on to become crazes have got something really unique at their heart, right? And with Shopkins, that's their miniature size. Because there's a Japanese concept called kawaii, which is all about kind of the aesthetic. There's a real unique aesthetic of cute little things. And they're taking on some of that. So they've got the baby faces and the huge eyes and all that. And if you actually look one in the eye for a while, like, it's really terrifying. But I... Right, love it or hate it, this is almost branding at its best. I mean, this is a product that knows what it is, it knows who it's for, and it just goes for it single-minded.
Yeah, and price is important.
Yeah.
Keeping the price low enough that it's not that much of an issue to get if you buy one.
Yeah.
But knowing that no one on planet Earth buys one.
Yeah, and it's one of the secrets to outrageous success is when the perceived value is here, but the price is actually here, which is the case with these things. But the other thing is that your kid, will be able to buy it with their tooth fairy money. So they're able to acquire as well. It really, when you look at this thing, it's an incredible pure play in terms of marketing. It's textbook marketing. It's got the place right, it's got the promotion right, the product right, and ultimately the price right.
And it doesn't hurt as much as Lego when you stand on it in the middle of the night.
Shopkins are more than just toys. There's 2 movies and a Netflix series. There's a... Oh, strap yourself in. There's a Shopkins video game. The goal is to shop. A live show...
We're just gonna go and shop, 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 shop it up, hey, shop it up, hey.
Yeah, let's let kids experience what an acid trip feels like. There's also shit tons of merch, including T-shirts like this. When in doubt, shop. And their slogan, which is a gritty reboot of the Pringles classic.
Once you shop, you can't stop.
Todd, is hooking 6-year-old kids on shopping a step back for humanity?
I mean, it's fantastic marketing and awful consumerism. I mean, you have to protect the notion that you have to protect children at some age to get them into the system, and their brains prior to the age of 8, they have no defenses for persuasion. They don't know the difference. They don't know if they're being persuaded, and everything goes straight to the subconscious with kids. So we do have to protect them as much as we can from the advertising that's getting them to be shopaholics at age 6. Now, on the flip side of that, if you look at this purely from a marketing perspective, in many ways, it's genius.
Yeah, and let's celebrate an Australian business that's gone from $10 million turnover in 2000 to $600 million last year.
Shopkins are also gendered, and many of the cleaning products have female names. Molly Mops, Sarah Softener, Wendy Washer. Ali, are Shopkins overestimating how much young girls love mopping?
Yeah, I reckon they definitely are. And this, I mean, I love plastic crap, as I said, but I prefer it gender stereotypes not included. Right, this makes me really want to do my own limited edition, which would be like Matthew mops, or Peter packs all the school lunches, or like Danny does all the shit around the house.
I mean, that feels like a message to one specific person.
Sorry, Dave. No, this kind of insidious stereotyping is actually really, really powerful. Right. And I was watching an interview with the CEO of Shopkins the other day, and he was talking about how little girls really love miniature things, right? As if there's something inherent in being female that we automatically like stuff that's miniature. And I thought, like, is that true? Do girls really inherently like miniatures, or are we just teaching them to think small?
No, it's definite conditioning. But Pokemon was aimed at boys, and part of the big success of Shopkins is single-mindedly aiming it at girls. That's one of the reasons it's become such a global phenomenon. And to do that, they use stereotypes. And the reason stereotypes work is because we condition our children over many, many years through marketing and through parenting to believe this. So they slide straight into it.
But it does seem disappointing in a time when most places like Target and that no longer have girls' aisles and boys' aisles, and that to have a website that you go to, then it differentiates girl toys and boy toys.
Yeah, totally.
This business, I feel like they're just learning from Disney. Yeah, so when you have a look at the fact that there's merchandise, that there's a live show, that you can get involved in via YouTube, and so they've created their own little Disney out of their office in Australia. And Disney would never have anything other than Molly Mop. Yeah? Why? Because they're in the mass market business and they're here to make as much money as they possibly can.
That doesn't mean it's right. I have two girls, and it's funny thing with my girls is that they love all kinds of rough and tumble stuff, except for these bloody things. For some reason, this just attracts them.
Yeah, it's clever, isn't it?
Yep. It's because the Shopkins talk to them. Shopkins are already pretty popular, but if they want to sell even more, they might need a spokesperson with an even higher voice, and I think I know just the guy.
And yet, the government says there's no necessity for an inquiry.
Collect them all! That's just about all for tonight. Please thank our panel, Russell, Dee, Ali and Todd. We'll leave you with another ad you couldn't make in 2017, where we shine a light on the commercials brands would much rather we forget. This 1991 campaign for Castlemaine 4X was designed to help the Aussie beer make a splash in the British market. You can only hope the lager was slightly more tasteful than its advertising. We'll see you next week.
I reckon we'll be all right if we lose some weight off the back.
Good sport, your missus. Australians wouldn't give a Castlemaine 4X for anything else.